Alright all, and welcome back to a new video and our last weekend preview before the Christmas racing. Can't wait for the Christmas racing. There seems to have been an awful lot of good comments, goodwill in the comments down below of the last week's video saying you'd like to see day-by-day videos, so that's what I'm going to do. Day-by-day videos, I'll go through all the races from Leopardstown, and then for kind of the big races at the other cards, I'll add them in over the top to kind of round out the whole thing, I suppose. But we've still got a weekend's worth of action to get through. It's going to be a bit of odds and sods, mostly centred around Ascot, but a few races from Haydock, from Navan tomorrow on Friday, and obviously at Thurles on Sunday. We've just got one down in Thurles as well, alongside one selection early on, I suppose, for one of the big races over Christmas. I'll leave that as a teaser, so some people might actually stay on and look at that near the end of the video. As always, really enjoying the comments down below, really enjoying the interaction at the moment. And of course, if you do want to get involved in horse racing ownership as maybe a Christmas gift or something to do with, you know, maybe you get a bit of Christmas money or something, I'm not so sure, but there is a offer being done at the moment by Horse Racing Buddy. You get an equal share into 5 horses. I've got a few nice enough horses, a horse especially called Do This Like This, who should be jumping a hurdle in the next couple of weeks. So that's really exciting to see. And got another horse, True Dreamer, who should be running up in Dundalk in a few weeks' time, as should Drummond Lad. So there's a lot of good things to be happening. Also a good kind of community of people, community of really nice people, and, you know, big group WhatsApps and all the rest. So if you are interested in that, if that's something that does tickle your fancy as a potential Christmas proposition, there is a deal going on. So get in touch with myself or with Kieran down in the description below, and we will sort you guys out. Moving on though into the weekend action, and Ascot tomorrow has 2 graded races which we'll cover first, and the first being the Grade 2 Novices Hurdle. Unfortunately no Dusart in this, which is a shame. I must say I'm not one for massively for Henderson novice hurdlers, but I was really taken by Dusart. I must say he'd been near enough the top of the pile for me come Supreme time, just looking at the race at this moment in time. That being said, based off that form and based off, you know, his other form as well, I think the bet in this race has to be Soaring Glory at 9-2. He was just touched off on this card last year by Israel Champ in the listed bumper. He didn't get stuck in the mud. I think he is probably better on a slightly sounder surface, but it's not going to be massively heavy by whatever it is, I think 225 tomorrow. Well, I'd like to hope not anyway. It's something you may have to bear in mind come the latter races on Saturday's card when they've had a full 2 days racing on it. But Soaring Glory, look, his hurdle career has gone pretty well so far. He beat Brave Man's Game, who's a horse that an awful lot of people are looking at as a potential Ballymore horse and a really good horse for the future. He then was second to Dusart and then fell at Weatherby last time out at 8s on. He would have won. Fell 2 out when he was going very easily. Obviously does have to come back into a Grade 2 having had a fall, and that obviously isn't ideal, but I do think 9-2 is the value play in this. Llandinabo Lad's your favoured at 3-1, and I just think that's very ground-centred, and perhaps it's prudent for it to be ground-centred because it will be soft enough, but I don't know, I just don't think he's got the requisite class of some of these. If the race was to go, you know, maybe on a slightly sounder surface, I don't think Llandinabo Lad would lay a glove on the likes of this Soaring Glory. You know, no ordinary Joe, a very fascinating newcomer to the hurdle game for Nicky Henderson and My Drogo for Dan and Harry Skelton. Like, it's a really good race actually for a small race, and especially with Dusart not running, it's still a pretty trappy affair. But Soaring Glory, I think just at the prices, I can see the angle behind Llandinabo Lad because of the ground, but he's 3-1, 5-2. I think that's a bit too short for me when Soaring Glory is there at 9-2. The Noel Novices Chase is the second race we'll be covering on Friday's card at Ascot, and I'm going to take a real stab at this one. It wouldn't be something I'd usually do, but I think it's a really trappy race. It's a race that I wouldn't have a massive say on, and as a result I'm going to land on Allart here, or Allart. for Nicky Henderson and Nico de Boinville at 5-2. This horse actually showed off that he was well capable of going through this type of ground last year when winning his 2 Novice hurdles before finishing 5th in the Supreme. And you have to remember, actually, the Supreme was running very tacky ground because the ground had kind of chewed up. There was a lot of rain Monday at Cheltenham, then it kind of dried. And, you get that really testing, tacky ground as a result. And he ran a great race. Now, this is his chase debut, and he's been pitched straight into a Grade 2. You're taking an awful lot on trust. His jumping is okay, his ability's there. But I just can't have Fiddler on the Roof. And, you guys know that I've put him up a few times now, but I just keep getting my fingers burnt at skimpy enough prices. And I just don't know what his trip is. Like, maybe it is this trip on heavy ground, but... would it overly surprise me if he won? No, but would it surprise me if, he came second or third again? No, like I just don't know whether he's quite up to it. And Allart maybe brings a little bit of an unexposed, well, he certainly brings an unexposed profile into the race, and maybe one to keep the right side of. As I say, it's a speculative one. It wouldn't be one of my stronger fancies of the weekend, I must confess. Moving on to Saturday's card, starting off with the handicap chase. The 2.5 mile handicap chase, I believe it is, before the long walk hurdle. And I really quite like Not Another Muddle in this race. He's around 10-1. He's a horse I do like an awful lot. And I do quite like these Gary Moore horses, I must say. And I just think this horse has an awful lot of ability in him. He's obviously been very fragile to train, which isn't ideal, but... he was a very good 5th in the Grand Annual in 2019, and I backed him for that race, and he ran a stormer, really, considering he made a few jumping mistakes. He was quite fresh as well. He then finished second at Fontwell, beaten by Roman de Sanam, who's a good horse in his own right, and then missed the entirety of last season up until Cheltenham. They had a speculative go at the Brown Advisory, which didn't go to plan. We haven't seen him since. Again, you're taking an awful lot on trust. I've got the race up here. It's 2 miles, 2 furlongs and a half, so it's in between 2 and 2.5, which in theory, should be this horse's type of trip, because the Grand Annual, he was staying on to the line. At Fontwell over 2.5, he was maybe slightly outstayed, so maybe this in-between trip is right. He's facing a stablemate in Early Dilemma, who's come back off a mammoth absence to run a stormer at Sandown the other week when he was beaten by his stablemate Darabin. He's got the bounce factor to potentially overcome in this race. You've got legends like Mengley Khan making his stable debut for Nicky Henderson, but I just think in a race you're going to get your 3 places. It wouldn't surprise me if Not Another Muddle was to run a big race on the back of an absence. I think he is better than a mark of 138. He's obviously been very hard to train, but taking it on trust that he will be tuned up and will be ready to go, I think he is worth a small play at 10-1. The long walk hurdle is probably the best, is obviously the best race standard-wise on the card, and it's great to see this morning, Thursday morning, that the entries have held up. You do often sometimes see, people swaying out of the way of these big races. It's good to see an awful lot of the big names turn up. Sergeant Burley's obviously not running for Big Gord, but that was to be expected. I didn't expect him at all to come over in the first place. You guys know, based off my anti-post selections, I want Thyme Hill to win this race, and I do think he will win this race. And a bit like Imperial Aura a few weeks ago, he's going to end up being my nap of the weekend at 2-1. I think it's a pretty good price if you're asking me. I think he only has Paisley Park to beat. Personally, main fact, it's a great story. I wouldn't begrudge him winning, but I just think he has to find an awful lot more to get up to Paisley Park and Thyme Hill standard. Roxanne is a mare that's never done it for me. Really, at this top level, she won a weak as race up in Wetherby last time out. She does get the mare's allowance, which does bring her into things, but I would, again, like to hope Thyme Hill and Paisley Park are just better than this. Thyme Hill, he does have to improve again, but there's no reason to suggest why he won't. It was his first start out in novice company when he won the long distance hurdle at Newbury. This is the long walk hurdle today, and he does have to meet Paisley Park on level weights this time, but I see no reason to suggest why he can't do so. I thought he was holding Paisley Park fairly comfortably at the line at Newbury. I don't think Paisley Park was making any more inroads. I think there was still an awful lot to come from Thyme Hill, and I really want it to be the case. Like, I'd love Dickie Johnson. He's probably near enough the tail end of his career to have one more big Grade 1 horse to ride. And this horse looks to be the one that potentially is this. And I just really like him. He's obviously a horse I've put up in the Stayers hurdle at a big price. If he wins again on the weekend and beats Paisley Park again, geez, does he become 5-2, 3-1 for the Stayers hurdle? Maybe 3-1, because we haven't seen a fair few of the Irish challengers out again. They'll all be running, I assume, in the Christmas hurdle, the grade 1 over 3 miles. I'd say that will be Sire de Burley, Fury Road, Ronald Pump. All of them will rock up in that race. So that would be an interesting clue as well. But Thyme Hill for me in this one, I think 2-1 is actually a good price. And he will be my selection and my nap of the weekend. Moving on to the Silver Trophy Handicap Chase. The conditional's in here at 4-1 favourite, and I love the conditional. Realistically, I will be probably having a small bet on him, but he's not going to be my selection for the race. I would love to see him win, but I just think it's a very short price. I don't like taking those prohibitive prices on these big handicaps, usually, although you'll see one later in the video that may be the case. The one I'd be siding with in here is Regal Encore at 8-1 each way for Richie McLernan and Anthony Honeyball. He's off a mark 150, which is pretty steep, but his record around Ascot just speaks for itself. His last 6 runs at the course, which have been 6 course and distance handicaps, he's won 3 and placed in 3 others. So there's absolutely nothing not to like. His form figures away from Ascot are pretty dreadful, to be honest. He didn't run much of a race in the Ladbrokes Trophy last time out, having won at Ascot. But I think just returning to this place seems to light him up. As I say, I think he's a pretty safe each way bet. Hopefully, I think it's a 10-11 runner field, and you'll definitely get your 3 places, and maybe you might get a few bookies who are generous enough to pay out 4 places. And if that's the case, I really can't see him being out of that, and that's probably the safest each way play of the race. Moving on to the Betfair Exchange hurdle, which seems to be changing its name every year. It was the Ladbroke one year, it was the Coral one year, the Paddy Power one year. It's now the Betfair Exchange, and I've got 2 to go to war with in the Betfair Exchange. Starting off with Isolate for Alan King and Tom Cannon. 14-1 he is, best price at the moment, off a mark of 128. A very young horse, very unexposed horse, and as a result creeps in here off such a low weight. He does have an awful lot to find, and he doesn't have that handicap hurdle experience, which are both negatives. But his 2 novice hurdle wins the last twice have been really impressive, beating a good horse called Glory in honour of Tom Lacey's at Taunton before winning at Leicester on really deep ground. And I suppose before that Leicester run, I was dubious about this horse on that type of ground, but he seemed to go through it fine at Leicester. Now, I know that was a weaker race, so this will probably properly test the credentials of the ground, but they must be happy enough if they've declared him to run. Obviously, Milk Wood, who was a big fancy for the race, has been pulled because of the ground. So it's good to see that Alan King is keeping the faith, thinks this horse will handle it, and 14-1 is not the worst each way play. And the other one is an odd one. It is a bit of an Oceans one, and I do have the odd notion. But I really quite like Not So Sleepy in this race at 20-1. Last year's winner, he won this race at an absolute rout off 127 last year. He's now off 142, so he's a full stone higher. But since then, you look at his hurdle runs, he got left behind at the start in the Betfair hurdle from a standing start, and the same in the Champion hurdle. And then obviously jinked right and unseated at the first in the Fighting Fifth. He was 4th in the Cesarewitch on the flat, which does indicate that the engine is still intact, I believe. And that was off a mark of a 93 on the flat as well, which is a pretty decent standard to be achieving that off. I just think if this horse is going to get it right again over hurdles, it will be over this course and distance. Tom O'Brien's already nicked a big handicap this year from the front on Cool Cody in the Paddy Power, and it wouldn't surprise me if similar tactics are enforced here. And hopefully, if he doesn't have notions himself about the game, like he obviously did at Newcastle, he might run a big race from the front. He likes the course and distance. He loves the ground and could go well. I think he's just overpriced at 20 to 1. Moving on just to around the grounds now, there's a bit of everything here. The Tommy Whittle handicap chase at Haydock is there, probably feature race, 3 mile 1 furlong, the 240 race it is, and I quite like Hill 16 in this race for the Twist and Davises at 3 to 1. It's not a great price for a handicap of this nature, but he won off a mark 126 on stable debut at Foss last. Now, I put him up that day at 2 to 1, and he won by, I think, 46 lengths. It was one of my more convincing 2 to 1 winners I've ever seen. He's now off a mark 138, but just when he was trained by Sue Smith and owned by Trevor Hemmings, it looked for a while like this horse was going to be a really, really talented horse, and never really fulfilled that potential. And maybe just the change of stables has lit this horse up a bit. He obviously won over fences off a favourable mark and then won over hurdles last time out on better ground. I think this trip, and especially this ground, probably suits the horse more, and I'm going to be taking him. At Navan tomorrow, 2 from Friday at Navan, that is. The 12:30, it's a maiden hurdle. I quite like a horse called Flanking Manouevre for Noel Meade and Sean Flanagan. Had some decent enough bumper form last year before winning at Downpatrick in a bumper on reappearance. He has a few decent horses as a unraced Henry de Bromhead, of course, in the Rob Coor Silks that potentially could be good. I think Gordon's got a point-to-point winner in there as well. But other than that, I think he'll probably be second or third favourite, and I think he should be bang there. And the 135, the Navan Grade 2 Novices hurdle over 2.5 miles. An awful lot of talk about this Holy Macapony for Henry de Bromhead and Rachel Blackmore. Obviously holds its chance, but I think people are willing to kind of oversee Fighter Allen a little too easily in this race. And 10 to 3, I think, mightn't be the worst price against Holy Macapony. You have to remember Holy Macapony's maiden hurdle win was on absolutely bottomless ground, and he was up against a Willie Mullins horse that was well thought of, but who didn't really perform on the ground, stopped to almost a walk. Everything else couldn't go with it either. You know, Takarengo was well beat. He's been well beat since as well. This Fighter Allen beat a horse called Lifetime Ambition of Jesse Harrington's, who's then ended up just getting touched off in a Navan Novices hurdle, I think, by Gordon Elliott, point-to-point recruit. So there's a decent enough level of form to it. He was tying up at the end. I think that would suggest that he'd come on for the run. It was only his second start over hurdles. His first was for Gordon Elliott in a Grade 2. I think he's a half-brother to Envoy Len, if memory serves me right. And obviously, I suspect he's not going to reach that scale, but you know, it's interesting that Chris Jones has a horse with Willie Mullins now, and this horse did look a little bit above average, I thought, when he won his maiden hurdle. I thought he travelled into the race like a really nice horse, and it wouldn't surprise me if he gave the favourite a bit to think about. Finally, last one at Thurles on Sunday. There won't be much racing at the start of next week, so it may be the get-out stakes at Thurles on Sunday, and one I'm going to be trying to get out on is in the Beginner's Chase 12:30. I think he might be a short enough price, but I really hope Sam's Profile can do the business there. He fell on Chase debut, but put in a really nice performance, third behind Monkfish last time out at Ferry House, running nicely and jumping nicely. I think there is obviously a Beginner's Chase in this horse. He was a Grade 1 placed novice hurdler, let us not forget. Twice, I believe, as well. He was second in the Lawless and Ace and second in the race at Punchestown as well. Either side of a fifth in the Ballymore behind City Island and Champ. He brings a lot of good form to the table, should be winning a race of that nature. And obviously the bonus one, looking forward to next week. I'll be covering all these races in a much more detail next week. But the one comes from the Welsh National. It's a race that I have talked about a little bit on Twitter. I've put this horse up on Twitter, and I'm going to put him up to you as well. It's one of my favourites, and for no real reason other than that I backed him a couple of times and I've won on him. But a horse called Dominatuer for Oliver Sherwood and the Brookses. He's 25 to 1 currently. I believe he does run off a mark of 141. I just think he's tailor-made for a race like this. He loves Chepstow. His 2 wins over fences have both come at Chepstow over 3 miles. The second one coming on this card last year, where really showing a tough and game attitude to win. The only issue with this horse is sometimes he's inclined to make a bad mistake over a fence. If you could say that he'd jump even relatively adequately, I can't see him not being banged there. I think he's well weighted. I think he's better than this mark. And if he gets his ideas together over fences in terms of the jumping and in terms of travelling, the engine is in this horse to go and win a big handicap chase of this nature. And that's what I'll be taking him to do. Dominatuer at 25-1 for the Welsh National. Anyway, I hope you guys did enjoy this video around the even 20-minute mark. If you did so, do give it a like and subscribe to the channel down below. Almost at 2,100 subscribers, which is great. Thanks to everyone that subscribed recently, and obviously the regulars as well. If you have any thoughts about the weekend's racing, who you fancy at Ascot or across the cards, do let us all know down in the comments down below, and we'll hopefully get a bit of chat going. And of course, if you have any early Christmas fancies, I know it's not that early now, it's only 10 days away or 9 days away till Stephen's Day, but if you do have any early fancies for the Christmas racing, get them down below as well. No after timing here whatsoever. So until next time out, where we'll be looking forward to the big Christmas racing and potentially doing the day-by-day videos, hope you stay safe, stay well, land a few bets, and I'll see you guys then. Cheers.